Hi, we are Simply Brain, a channel devoted and created to educate people about brain health. Today, we're talking to Mary Lou Falcone, who's written the book I Didn't See It Coming: Scenes of Love, Loss, and Lewy Body Dementia, which is about her experience being a caregiver for her husband Nikki Zan and their fight against Lewy Body Dementia. Hi, Mary Lou. Thank you for joining us today on our Simply Brain podcast. We're glad that you could make the time for us.
I am thrilled to be here with both of you. Thank you.
So I wanted to start with that I read in your bio that you were an opera singer and you clearly have a passion for the arts. Can you tell us how you are now choosing to use your voice?
Absolutely. It's all about communication. So I'd like to go back to myself as a 10-year-old. And as a 10-year-old, I communicated through singing. My dad had a massive stroke, and we didn't talk much about his illness. And so emotionally, you had to get it out. So what did I do? I sang. That's how I got it out. And then as a teenager, I used my singing, again, communicating, to actually get a scholarship to college. And after that, I became a professional singer. So that was a great use of communicating. But along the way, I decided that that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to help other people communicate their art, their skills. So I became a public relations expert, helping other people to actually express themselves while I use my words now instead of my singing to do it. We fast forward to today. And today I use a couple of skills as an advocate for Lewy body dementia. I use my skills as a speaker, and I use my skills as a writer, having just wrote the book I Didn't See It Coming: Scenes of Love, Loss, and Lewy body dementia.
So I think it's really amazing that it seems that in your entire life, you're constantly using your voice in many different ways. So I wanted to ask you, in your experience with seeing the effects of Lewy body dementia, how could you best explain it to someone who does not have any experience with it?
I think I'd like to explain it very simply. First of all, it's a brain disease. It's a neurodegenerative brain disease. And that means that rogue proteins is what I call them. They're called alpha-synucleins, but no one's going to remember alpha-synuclein. So they're proteins in the brain that go rogue, and they do damage. And while they're doing their damage, they actually hinder a couple of areas. One is cognitive, the area of cognition, thinking, remembering, daily functions, and the other are your motor skills. So they attack both of those sides. But unlike Alzheimer's, which is a constantly steady downhill progression, Lewy body dementia has fluctuations. And these fluctuations are what make it distinctive. One day the person is 100% who they are, and the next day they don't even know you. So that makes it difficult. And the other thing that distinguishes it from Alzheimer's is the area of hallucinations. That hallucinations are there at the beginning. So those are the two main things. In addition, uh, there's something called REM, sleep disorder. And that means that while you're asleep and you're dreaming, we all dream, right? But when we three dream, we don't act out what we're dreaming. We don't, our legs don't go, our arms don't go. But a person with Lewy body dementia will dream and will act it all out, making it sometimes a little scary to see somebody actually punching or the legs going, etc.
So I think it's very interesting that even though they're both under the umbrella term of dementia, they could be so vastly different. So thank you for that.
Thank you for asking.
I have a question. Is there anything that you would want someone my age to know about Lewy body dementia or how to help someone with any other cognitive challenges?
Cooper, that's a really great question. And the answer is yes. I think the two really strong words are kindness and patience. They're very important with somebody who has dementia. And those are the ones to remember. But also, someone with dementia wants to know three things. They want to know they're loved. They want to know that they are safe and they want to know that they're protected. So the more you can say, I love you, you're safe, you're protected, the better and more comfortable that person is going to be with you and you with them. The other thing that I would say is, a person with dementia and Lewy body among them will repeat themselves. They'll tell the same story over and over and over again. And sometimes, just elderly people do that. But dementia folks really have that in common. And so when that happens, even though you've heard it again, the tendency is to say, oh, Grandma, you told me that. But the better thing to do is to basically say, really, and listen to the story again. And when the person makes mistakes and says the wrong thing or whatever, just go with it. Unless it's dangerous, then you want to redirect. But if it's not dangerous, just let them have the last word and let them keep their dignity.
I think that's really interesting. Also, what inspired you to write a book?
I'm the person who always said, I will never write a book. And be careful what you say, because never say never is what I learned at my ripe old age. So what inspired me was before Nicky died, and my husband Nicky Zan had Lewy body dementia, and he died in July of 2020. But about 3 months before he died, he looked at me in a very lucid moment and he said, Mary Lou, you have to write. And I thought to myself, what does that mean? And I remembered it, but I tucked it way back. After Nicky died, it suddenly dawned on me what I had to write about. I had to tell our story. I had to tell the journey of Lewy body dementia. But before that, I had to go back and tell the journey of being a caregiver since I was 10 years old and what that means in real life, because everybody is a caregiver in some way, shape, or form. So why did I do it? I did it to help other people know they're not alone.
That's very inspiring. Thank you for
Thank
that.
you. Thank you, Cooper.
So I wanted to ask you, out of all the things you talk about in your book, what is one highlight you would like to share with us and our audience?
Oh, wow. That is, I thought long and hard about this one. And there's something I'm going to read to you that it's a little tough sledding, but I think that it's worth it because it says it all. About a month and a half before Nicky died, he wrote a poem. And the poem actually gives you insight into what somebody with Lewy body dementia is thinking about, what they're feeling. I didn't find this poem until 3 months after his death. And when I found it, it was shocking. And where did I find it? I found it hidden in a sketchbook. Nicky was an artist. He was a great artist. And he sketched all the time. And in this sketchbook, I just happened to pick it up. I'd looked at it before, but this time I kept going. And all of a sudden, there was this poem. And this is what he wrote, again, a month and a half before he passed. The photo on the wall, if I'm not mistaken, was taken when our love was just brand new. It was not long ago when we were making the plans to love each other strong and be true. A devil in our home used deception to corrupt the loyal angel that my heart knew. An instant into this cruel and hateful reception, vengeance replaced the heart that once beat true. With blinding rage and searing pain, a ready knife filled my hand. I thrashed with intent, cutting them down, and never was the same again. While I wait for my date with the hangman and his chore, and by chance I see my reflection, that less than human sight that haunts each tortured night, that stranger in the mirror is me.
Wow, that's very insightful to how someone who suffers from Lewy body dementia can express the disease to someone else.
And know what's happening. That's the difference between Alzheimer's and Lewy body. The Lewy body person knows exactly what's happening. And while that's a tough thing to hear, and I know it is so important to be able to know that people understand what's happening. They get it. And even people with Alzheimer's, they know the touch. They know the sound of the voice. There is a calming effect about it. I personally believe that people do feel everything that's happening. They may not be able to tell you about it. They may not be able to put the words to it. But I do think feelings are there.
So, Mary Lou, it is very obvious that you loved and cared for Nicky, but as someone who never got a chance to meet him, could you share a fun story or something that makes you smile when you think of Nicky?
If I may, if you'll indulge me, I'm going to tell you two stories. But I'll
That would
preface
be
it.
great.
Is that okay? Good.
Yeah.
But I'll preface it by saying that the day Nicky was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, he said something to me that has stuck with me forever. And that is, we have had a great run. We cannot be sad. And those words are so important because that's the way Nicky lived, making other people feel better. He always had time for everybody. He always reached out. And when he did die, and I got hundreds of letters of condolence, they all said basically the same thing. Nicky made us feel special. And indeed he did. That's who he was. So there are two stories that make me smile. One is about Nicky as a child, and the other is about Nicky as an adult. As a child, Nicky loved books. He adored books. And he respected books. And he would go to the library. And when he'd go to the library in his hometown, which was Little Neck, New York, his friends would come by and they'd all get rowdy, and Nicky hated them. So he took himself out of that library and rode his bike to the next town, which was Great Neck. Went into the library. Now, you know, his name is Nicky Zan, right? So he goes into the Great Neck Library and he says to the librarian, I would like to register. And she said, yes. And what is your name, young man? He's a 10-year-old now. What is your name, young man? And he says, my name is Jeffrey Greenberg. She looked, she had no reason to know that he wasn't Jeffrey Greenberg. And she said, and where do you live, Jeffrey? And he said, oh, I live at, and he gave an address. Now, he gave an accurate address. It just wasn't his. So he then proceeded to go once a week. He'd ride there on his bicycle. He'd take out books. He'd sit and read. And that became his oasis. And that story always made me smile because it told me about the depth of Nicky the child and about his respect. The second story is about Nicky as an adult, as an artist. And we were friends before we became a couple. So during our friendship period, I really admired his artwork and I followed it. And one day I was doing some work with Lincoln Center, and we needed an illustration for a playbill. Playbill is the program that they hand out at Lincoln Center. And so I called Nicky and I said, I need a sketch of these two very prominent people. One is a philanthropist by the name of Avery Fisher, and the other one is a very famous violinist by the name of Elmar Oliveira, who is just about to get the Avery Fisher Prize. So these are my parameters. This is what I need. Nicky said, no problem. I'll deliver it on time. You want an India ink sketch? I said, yes, black and white India ink sketch. Lovely. He comes to my office with a finished sketch, hands it over. I'm so excited to open it and see it. I open it and I go, oh my goodness. Well, this is a beautifully rendered sketch, but maybe we've had some miscommunication here, Nicky. This is not really going to work. And he looked at me and said, well, what do you mean? I mean, it's a perfect sketch. And what it was Elmar, the violinist, playing the violin with his teeth, and the philanthropist, Avery Fisher, looking like the deranged Mad Hatter. And, it was great for Mad Magazine, but not for what we were going to do. So I fumbled a little bit more and politely, tried to not hurt the artist's feelings. He let me go on for a minute or two, and finally he started laughing. And he said, you really don't think that I would have come with just that sketch. And he pulls out the real one, which was perfect. It's just what I needed, just what I wanted. But he did the other one to make me laugh. And I always thought to myself, wow, he spent the time, the energy, the creativity on doing something absolutely perfect to make me laugh. And then whipped out the real one, which of course was excellent, perfect, and gorgeous. And that story always makes me laugh because that's Nicky. Will always go the extra mile to make somebody happy, to make somebody laugh.
That's a really amazing story about Nicky, and that just shows what a special person he was.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. If I may, I'd like to tell you one more story about Nicky Zan, the rock and roller, because we've touched the art, we've touched other areas, his kindness, his goodness. But in the 1950s, Nicky at age 14 was a rocker. And everybody said, oh yeah, everybody played in their basement. I said, yeah, well, not Nicky. Nicky had a band. He wrote the songs. He played piano. He was the lead singer. And they went on the road with the likes of Jerry Lee Lewis, Patsy Cline, and let's see, who was the third one? Johnny Cash. So he was out there, and his parents let him go on the road at age 14. I guess they realized they couldn't stop him, and it fulfilled him. At the same time, he was a good kid, so he paid attention. Never got into the drug scene, thank goodness, but was a hellion on the road, no question about it. Until at 21, he decided, you know what? Now I've done this rock thing. Now I'm going to be an artist, a serious artist, and just switched overnight.
Wow, that's really just inspiring and amazing at the same time.
When did you begin to notice the early symptoms of Lewy body dementia in your husband, Nicky Zane?
Well, Nicky Zan was always joking and a life of the party kind of person. And so when he would get very serious or slightly angry or a little agitated, it was unusual. And this began to happen in the fall of 2016. Now, earlier in this discussion, I mentioned that he had died in July of 2020. So we go back 4 years, and I began to notice these slight changes in behavior. But by Christmas time of 2016, we were in Vienna, in Austria. And one night, and he was tired. He was very fatigued. He was just not himself totally. And one night he was supposed to meet me at a restaurant that he knew well, and we were meeting friends there. We came separately. I got to the restaurant, the friends got to the restaurant. Almost an hour passed and no Nicky. And I got really, really worried. And you may say, well, why didn't you pull out your cell phone? Well, because Nicky didn't carry his cell phone with him, and if he had, it wouldn't have been turned on anyway. So that would have been fruitless. I got really worried, and I said, you know what? Excuse me, I need to go and try to find him. I had no idea where I was going to go. I walked out of the restaurant, walked into the main square, and lo and behold, as fate would have it, and thank you, there was Nicky. And he said to me, you didn't give me the address of the restaurant. You gave me the name, but not the address. But this was a restaurant where he had been many, many, many times. It was one block from where we were staying. And he had gotten lost. He said, I asked many people, and they sent me in the wrong directions. And something in his eyes told me, just go with it. And I said, Nicky, I am so sorry. It is totally my fault. I didn't write down the directions, and I didn't give you the address. I am sorry. We went back to the restaurant. He got over the anger. He got over the embarrassment. But it was clear to me that that was the beginning. From then, things just kept going downhill.
How do you raise awareness for Lewy body dementia?
That is a great question. I think you have to be not afraid to talk about it. I'm doing it through the book that I wrote, I Didn't See It Coming, Scenes of Love, Loss, and Lewy Body Dementia. And I'm also doing it by raising money for a documentary film that is coming out in 2024 called Facing the Wind. But awareness is about making people comfortable with it, with any dementia, not just Lewy body, but any dementia. The more comfortable people are, the more they'll reference it, the more they'll open up to you. The more they open up, the more awareness is created. The more awareness that's created, the more dollars that can be raised for research. The more research, the more hope for the future. When the hope for the future comes in, perhaps there will be something to slow it down. And ultimately, awareness is going to bring about a cure.
In what ways can people our age help raise awareness for Lewy body dementia, which is actually the second most common progressive form of dementia?
Thank you for saying that, Cooper, because Lewy body, as you just said very clearly, is the second most prevalent progressive dementia after Alzheimer's disease. I think awareness can be raised by just talking about it, by not being afraid to talk about it, by being open to it. It's around us. It's all around us, and we don't wish it on anyone. But when it happens, it's real. And to go with it, to embrace it, not to be afraid of it, to actually help the person with it, to feel connected, to feel loved, to feel protected and safe, as we said before. These are the elements that are so, so important. And I think to have a discussion among you, among people your age, who can go there with you, who can talk about it in a form that makes sense to them. Nobody's going to want to go into all the detailing of it because there's no need to at this stage of the game at your age. But to know that it's there, to know that people can't help what they're doing, to know that when they tell the story 100 times, it's because they don't remember that they've told it to you even once, and it's feeling fresh to them. So to embrace them, to go with them, and to make them feel comfortable and not like an outsider. The other thing is to actually talk to people, to look them in the eye and talk to them, whether you think they're understanding you or not. The truth is, even doctors do this, and it is such a big mistake. You walk into a doctor's office with the person who has dementia, and the doctor immediately begins talking to you, not to the person who's afflicted. And that person feels it. They feel deeply. So include them in what you're saying. And don't expect an answer necessarily, but be inclusive. But among your friends, don't be afraid to talk about it. And maybe the question is, does somebody in your family have some kind of a brain problem, maybe a dementia, maybe they're forgetful. How do you handle it? How do you deal with it? Because I have a friend or a grandmother or a great uncle, and that person needs my help too. So let's start the conversation. I think that's where to go with it.
I think it's really interesting that just simply being aware about something can almost kickstart like a string of mini solutions that can ultimately lead up to something really big.
That's a brilliant way of phrasing it, because you're absolutely right. Awareness, awareness, awareness. That's what it takes. And that's what I'm doing. I'm one person, but I believe that I and others can start the ball rolling, because when we do, we're going to increase, one person tells one person tells one person. It's like the telephone game. It all gets out there and it all helps.
Mary Lou, I think that's a great way to help many different people who are struggling with cognitive diseases.
Yes.
So where can people go to learn more about Lewy body dementia?
The best resource that I know is a website that the Lewy Body Dementia Resource Center has. It is comprehensive. It's in many languages. It tells you everything you want to know about the disease. It's pages and pages and pages long, but it is really good. And so you would go to, and I will say this slowly, LewyBodyResourceCenter.org. That is Lewy, Lewy, body, BODY, resourcecenter.org. The reason I spell it is I've had a lot of very high-powered, intelligent people look at me and say, Lewy, what? How do you spell that? They can't find it. So if you can't spell Lewy, you can't get help. So Lewy again is Lewy. So it's LewyBodyResourceCenter.org.
So, something that stood out to me in this conversation was the perspective you gave of a caregiver and their relationship with someone who was impacted with a complex brain disease. So, thank you for giving us that important insight.
Thank you. And if you'd like a little bit more insight into the book that I wrote about being a caregiver and to help caregivers, you can go to my website, which is the book's website, MaryLouFalcone.com. So that's my name, MaryLouFalcone.com.
Thank you.
Thank you both. You have been just inspirational.
Thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe to Simply Brain for more content in the future.